Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Yeah, this is the, next video in the series of like my experience at Yorkville in grad school and becoming a psychotherapist in Ontario. I know the last time I made this, it was like a year back, but thank you so much for the support from everyone. So many people reached out with questions and so many people commented and liked and watched the video and supported it that, I figured I might as well not answer those questions individually and just answer them in this vlog. And yeah, I just really hope you get something useful out of it. I'm going to be talking about everything pre-practicum. So like the year and a half-ish to 2 years before you start your actual like clinical placement that runs for 8 months. Now that I'm done all my courses, I'm going to focus on everything before that. And then I hope to make a video either during practicum or placement, like monthly, or just making one at the end on, how to find a site, how to apply, how to become a registered psychotherapist in Ontario. That's another thing, is that I am an Ontarian. So this video will mostly focus on people who study in Ontario and what you can do with this degree and the different steps to like apply and all that. Other things are like tips, tricks, and like info that I've learned. A lot of the classes have a familiar, like repetitive setup, except for like the 4 I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to go through that, and then I'm going to talk about a little bit about placement and practicum and like things you should probably like stay away from and steer clear from. But yeah, also in making this video, I have reached out to some friends who have, given me suggestions and tips that they found throughout grad school. So I'll sprinkle those in there and you can follow them in the comments down below. I'll put it in the description. So let's go. So I've got my handy clipboard here and I'm just gonna like go through the questions and stuff that I've made. So the main question I got from my last video was, can I work full-time? And I personally didn't work full-time as I was battling like an illness throughout this program. And to people with chronic illness, you can get this done. I have faith in you because I managed to do it. But I didn't, but I did have friends who were working full-time. And they said it wasn't as catered to working like adults as Yorkville makes it out to be in their like advertising and stuff like that. But they were still able to, do one course at a time, not doubling up by any means, but they were able to like one course at a time, get things done while working full time. That being said, I was able to double up, but I'll get more into that later. So now to move on like insight on my experience in the program. I do wish there were more live lecture components. I have never done a master's degree before, only a bachelor's, and I know there were lots of like lectures involved with that. But yeah, in a master's program, or like at least in this one, it's a lot more like research based and like you do it yourself on your own time. But I do wish there was more like guidance from professors in that sense of like a lecture, so you don't always have to go find stuff yourself. You can just have it like, taught to you. Tuition does raise every year. That's something that caught me off guard. I didn't think that was a thing. I know rent increases every year, but I guess because this is a private university, they will raise the price every year. And with that being said, there's not a lot of like infrastructure improvements that go along with that. So you're not really seeing more bang for your buck per se. There's no health insurance. So in undergrad, I know we had that here at Yorkville. I guess because it's also private, you're not getting that. Because this university is private, that means the tuition isn't subsidized like public universities are, like Brock or Western per se. And there is a lack of like clubs and like sense of community at this school. I know just recently they started a club called like the Philosophical Psychology Society. But I'm pretty sure that's the only one. And so they're just kind of getting that up off the ground from what I see. So yeah, that's all there is in terms of like community, I'd say at the moment. The lectures that are live are recorded about 90% of the time, so you can watch them like whenever you want. But if you aren't there during the live one, there'll most likely be an assignment for you. You'll have to write like 2 to 3 pages. I'll discuss that later. But yeah, if you don't make a live lecture, don't worry, because most of the time it'll be recorded for you. And there are no scholarships or bursaries unless you're in the military, or if you're in your like first semester of the program. I know they'll do like a draw where you can like enter your name and then like be entered to like get like I think $5,000 off your tuition. But other than that, really look towards like OSAP and like your own provincial aid and scholarships outside of the government and the school. Okay, now for like tips and tricks and like other info that I've, you know, come across and learned. You can double up your courses after the second trimester, so after your first 5-ish courses. The school will try and like sway you away from doubling it up with like skills-based courses like the skills and counseling class and the interventions class. But I doubled up during those and I was just fine, to be honest with you, but I wasn't working full-time, so that's another thing. So it can be done, but maybe not in all circumstances unless you have a bunch of time on your hands. The next few tips come from Janet, who's my good friend in the program, and her information will be linked down below. She has a consulting agency called Finding Solutions, and she said to send your papers to Studiosity for grammar and spelling. I personally have never used Studiosity, but I know they will go through your paper, I think about 3 times a semester, if I'm not mistaken, or trimester as the school calls it. And they'll just, you know, give you feedback on that. You can also install Grammarly on your computer. I highly recommend that, and so does she. Even the free version is fine, just so you know you don't get dinged for like silly spelling mistakes. And if you want good grades on discussion questions, always have a citation or a source in them, and always have a question at the end to spark discussion so the next person can read it and be like, oh, okay, like instead of having to like come up with something random to talk about, they can just answer your question and it kind of just like has a nice flow to it. And she did recommend you get a tutor for research methods, but I personally think if you have a psychology bachelor's degree and you've done a statistics and a research course in your undergrad, which you probably have, then you'll be more than fine to handle the research methods class. I know everyone says it's a beast and it's there to like weed out people, but it's 5 weeks, and although it can be intense, it wasn't the hardest course in the program for me per se. I'll dive into that in a sec. And if you do need a tutor, just go on Facebook. As I mentioned in the other video, there's tons of Yorkville Facebook groups, either for your class or for research methods in general, or just for like there's a community one as well, and there'll be people trying to sell you their tutoring services like there's no tomorrow. Don't be anxious if you don't make friends in your first few classes. I didn't make any until my 4th course in the second trimester or semester. You make them through like group projects and like reaching out if you really are fond of their discussion questions and you guys have a good back and forth, or just through like networking with like people in your group, and like, you know, that way is a great way to make friends. And almost all classes will have group work except for like 2. And I believe that was like ethics and then the elective that you choose in the future. So do be aware of that. If you don't like group work, then maybe this program isn't the right one for you. Next is the 4 courses that have a different layout from like the 10 or so that you'll take. So skills counseling, this is still being like changed. I think they're changing it on like a yearly basis to make it more like accessible. But this is a 10-week course in which you'll have 3 live tests with the instructor and your group of like 3. And each test you'll be building on skills you learned previously, and they'll just mark you to see how good of like a therapist or psychologist you are. You must get a 70% on all assignments in this course to pass the class. So not just a 70 overall like previous classes, but you need a 70 on every single assignment and test. There will be live lectures that you need to attend, but if you don't attend them, they will be probably recorded, and you'll have to write like a 2 to 3 page paper instead to make up for that missed lecture. So make sure you keep that in mind. And you'll have journal entries every week instead of discussion questions, which is a relief to a lot of people, to be honest with you. I think it's like 8 of the 10 weeks are like journal entries, and then you just submit them all at the end. Then you have applying interventions, which like skills is also being like changed bit by bit until the school, I guess, finds something that they like about it. It's also 10 weeks, same format as the other one, except now you have 2 tests that you're being graded on live, and it'll be on 2 different interventions of your choosing that you've learned within the coming weeks. So think like cognitive behavioral therapy, solution focused, narrative, gestalt, that type of thing. And if you don't know what any of those are, don't worry, you will learn as you progress through the program. Then groups. Group counseling is a 5-week course. The first 3 weeks are set up the same as like any other class. And then the last 2 weeks, you will either be hosting a group therapy session, 3 of them with your partner, or you will be hosting a discussion forum with your partner that's like asynchronous if you can't do like the live option. And then the alternating week, on week 4 or 5, whichever week you didn't present, is when you'll be participating in the groups. I will say this class was very time consuming, and a lot of people in my class talked about how they didn't have any social life, they didn't have time for family or friends. So if you do take groups, just be wary of that, is that it's probably one of the most time intensive courses out of the bunch. And then last is the elective I chose, psychopathology. That's basically just studying like disorders of the mind and mental health and stuff like that. That was the hardest of the 4 electives to take. And I will say it was very hard, especially for the first 2 weeks, but I learned so much in it. I know the other electives are addictions, trauma, and school counseling, but none of those really piqued my interest. And I also went into psychopathology because you're going to be dealing with like mental disorders every day. Not like you won't be dealing with trauma and stuff like that, right? But it's also easier to take the course now and have a good base knowledge than it is to take it outside of the program, because it's just such a broad category of things to learn, right? Like with trauma and addictions, you can just take like a 101 course, right? And be certified in it, right? But psychopathology, I don't think I've ever seen like a brief certification, right? Because there's so many different facets within there, right? And so there was 3 papers in this class. And let's see, there were DQs every week, and each week you learned about a new set of disorders. So like one week was like mood disorders, and next week was like eating disorders. So I really liked that. And before you do pick an elective, make sure you look at your licensing body and what you need. I think in Alberta, you needed to take psychopathology if you didn't take it in undergrad, if you want to be a licensed psychologist. And in Ontario, I don't believe there were any like specifications as to like what elective you needed to take. Okay, and my last little spiel is about practicum, or your placement. Read the practicum handbook and know it like the back of your hand. Download it, print it, whatever you do. It is such an important document. Start making a list of sites and contacting them, I'd say about like 8 to 10 months before you're supposed to start your placement. That's what I did, and I had good luck. And I will say, I'm not going to get into the whole situation, but stay away from applying to health authorities. I followed all of Yorkville's rules, and I almost missed out my placement because it's just a very challenging thing to get your foot in the door. And I'm not saying it's impossible, but the people who talk about getting one most likely work at hospitals or clinics already, in which they have connections that you don't. So if you want my advice, look at private practices, or maybe even through your work if you work into like a mental health association or something like that. But yeah, I'd say stay away from the health authority. It'll be so much of a headache for you to do. It's just best if you don't. No, you don't get paid during placement. That was another big question. You can get an honorarium at the end, or like a living stipend that's like at the end, but you're not getting a salary from this, or like any kind of like job wage pay. You have 8 months to do it. You can't fast track it like you can fast track like the course portion of the program. You just gotta like stick it out from what I'm seeing. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Again, Janet's link is below, Finding Solutions, if you want to check her out. I do plan on making, like I said, a final video on practicum, on my placement and all that, and how to register with the CRPO. But that'll probably be about 8 months from now when I'm done it, probably around like April or May of next year. And yeah, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below. As always, I'm more than happy to answer them. Maybe they'll be featured on my upcoming video. And yeah, have a wonderful time at Yorkville if you decide to pursue this program and this journey. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.